everything could just be a stepping stone to getting you to where you want to be. But the most important thing is knowing where you want to be. That goes back to my original point about not being in the way, not over lawyering, not being a roadblocker, trying to enable the deal to happen, whatever context and environment that is. But at the same time, that protect word, always try and protect yourself. If you know it's important to you, you can overcomplicate life and the things that need to be done. Be impeccable with your word. If you have integrity, stand on business. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best.
Welcome back to the Football Economy, the show that takes you inside the business of football, where strategy meets sports. We explore how clubs are managed, how revenue is generated, and where the smart money is moving in the global game. Today's guest is someone who sits at the intersection of football, business, and culture. That person is Paul Musa. Paul is a sports lawyer, creator, educator, and one of the most recognizable voices shaping modern football thinking. He was an associate at Onside Law, a Tier 1 legal 500 sports and entertainment firm, advising athletes, executives, brands, and rights holders on complex commercial and legal matters in football. Paul's career blends law, media, innovation, and athlete empowerment, making him uniquely positioned to impact opportunities and challenges, shaping the future of the game we all love. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
No, thank you very much, man. And even just hearing you say all those things makes me realize that I do too much.
No, I think you're doing what you basically envisioned to do. It's not too much. I think if anything, you might look back and say you're doing too little. But you're quite ambitious and you're quite driven. Let me start from there. What is driving you? What are you running to, or what are you running away from?
That's a very good question. I think for myself, I'm driven by the pursuit of more and of challenging myself. I think the challenge is what drives me, and every opportunity I've kind of gone into has always been about challenging myself, whether that was joining Baller League, whether that was in terms of taking an opportunity to go and do the secondment at Adidas, whether that was when Dan asked me to get involved with the ASD, whether that was in terms of me having the idea to set up the Footie, or whether it was Athlete Investor Summit. For me, I'm driven about the challenge and driven about just working with good people and supporting people, really.
Right. So let's take a step back. What was just your childhood like? Where did you grow up? What was that like? What values were you, surrounded by? What was the sort of belief system that you were embedded with? Just, I want to understand your worldview in that sense at an early stage.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I grew up in London. I'm originally from East London, or to some people you might call it parts of Essex. And yeah, I think from a very young age, I'm quite religious into my faith. And that's always been what's kind of driven me and kind of pushed me along and kind of guided me as well. But I think even just my parents really, like, one of the things they always just used to say to me when I was younger was just be yourself and be the best. Be the best at what you do and be yourself. And those are two things I really try and live by in everything that I do. I just try and always be myself in every environment and every space and lane I've kind of gone into. And I always just try and be the best at what I do. And try and effectively try and attack everything head first and just try and give everything my all in terms of the opportunities and the things that I've done. And that's what really drives me and motivates me.
Yeah, talking about being the best, I think you won the Bird Prize for the best IP law coursework at Southampton Law School. So that's quite interesting. So you mentioned this is your worldview, and it's come across to me that you've consistently been at the top of every sort of like award, being in the debate club, being nominated to be a representative across board. What does leadership mean to you in terms of like, being given that responsibility at an early age, but also knowing that it comes with character forming, but also developing yourself and trying to inspire others?
Yeah, I think leadership to me is all about vision. It's all about vision. It's all about inspiring others, and it's always about being an example, really. And that applies across the board, whether you're a leader within an organization that you work in, whether you play team sports and you're a leader there on the pitch. You don't have to be called a leader or have a leadership role in your title to kind of lead and inspire others. You can do it in various different shapes and different forms. I think that's always quite a big thing for me. And even going back to some of the things you mentioned there about debate club and some of the things that I did in my childhood, I think that was a really important thing for me. that I went to a state school in East London, and like, I had some really good teachers who kind of really got me involved at an early age into public speaking, Model United Nations, debate club. And I think at a young age, I think it's really important for kids and young people to get involved in those opportunities, because those are the things that shape you and give you the confidence at an early age to step into rooms and feel as though you belong and have the confidence to be there. Me and like two of my friends that I grew up with, two of my best friends that I still speak to today, we represented London in the English public speaking competition and came fifth in the country. And it's just those little things about being able to speak to a room, communicate with people, get your message across clearly. Having that sort of stuff at an early age is really important. And I think it's important that people don't lose sight of the value and the values and the good that comes out of stuff like that.
Yeah. And during that time, if I'm not mistaken, you founded What and Where, which was like a marketplace for students to find accessible bars, restaurants within university campuses. I want to understand the mindset that you have in terms of like being an entrepreneur, because it's clear to me you're very entrepreneurial driven. Where is that from? Who cultivated it? Is it something that comes from the family, or is it something that you yourself just stumbled upon?
Yeah, no, I love how you're taking me right back. And this is for me, like with myself, I always say through the things that I've done, I've always seen myself as like an entrepreneur in the 9 to 5's body. Like I love the idea of the 9 to 5, working with people, being part of something exciting and special, but also I like the idea of building, and it's the building that excites me. Whether it was What and Where, the podcast, Fleet Investors Summit, the idea of building something and having something that's kind of my own and that I'm working towards and I'm serving, that's something that really fulfills me. And I think for What and Where, for me, it was really about having an idea, and I've always had that entrepreneurial first. I just think it just comes from my knack and my nature of just wanting wanting more, kind of where I grew up, the culture of wanting to build. And that experience taught me a lot, man. Like I was literally going door to door to independent businesses, restaurants, gyms, hair salons, barbers, etc. Like speaking to them, trying to get them to sign up to my platform, because effectively what I was trying to build was uni days meets Yelp. So at the time, obviously, as a uni student in the UK, there's a platform called Uni Days, and it targets more of the more sort of high street brands that people kind of shop in, the ASOS's, the Top Shops, etc. But at the time, the high street was dying, and I thought, okay, the high street's dying. Loads of students moving to university cities. How do these businesses get discovered? These independent businesses kind of had like different ideas, and we were just launching it, built a website, built an MVP, was doing marketing, sales, and I learned quite a lot, and I was failing fast. And I think that's another thing I would really encourage for young people today is like, try this stuff. Like I was pitching for money, won some grants, didn't get some funding, got some funding. People told me no, people told me yes, people gave me ideas. People didn't like what I was doing. People loved what I was doing, how I built the business and was trying to get it off the ground. If I do it now, I wouldn't have gone around it in that way. I wouldn't even have launched that business if I was to do it again, because thankfully I didn't continue it during COVID, but during COVID I would have been screwed because everything was shut. So how would the business have been making revenue? So it's like you learn so much by doing these things and trying, whether it's like the stuff I mentioned at the start about doing the Model United Nations and doing the debate club to learn about public speaking and to build confidence. By throwing myself into this, I learned so much about things. Although like my profession now is a lawyer, and I was working at that time to being a lawyer because I did that while I was at uni. I learned about sales, I learned about marketing. I'm now working at Baller League, where we wear many hats and we get involved in different aspects of the business. So I now understand things in a different way, in a different lights. Those experiences to me are the ones that I look back on that are invaluable, even though it didn't become the unicorn business that I thought it would at the time.
Right. So my question to you here is about the thing that interests you, or the thing that pushed you towards becoming a lawyer to begin with. Everyone has different motivations, but why law? Why is that the thing that you decided you wanted to dedicate the rest of your life to?
Yeah, I want to dedicate the rest of my life to, but I think for me it just comes down to what I was like in school. Like my dad by background's an accountant, good at numbers, maths, so is my older sister. I don't think I was ever the type of student who could have gone into a maths-based degree or maths-based profession at that time. I was more the student who was more in tune with my humanity, English, very good at speaking. So I think for me, naturally, like what kind of excited me about law was how you can kind of get involved in a business, work within the business, work with businesses, work with individuals, how law kind of governs society in all different aspects. And I always knew early on I wanted to get into sports law because like I've got loads of friends who are lawyers, and I've got friends who are lawyers who work, and they're lawyers in oil and gas and in finance and in banking and in insurance and in all kinds of different sectors and types of law. And those areas never interested me. I was always someone who was just always fascinated about the link between law and business, and how you need law to help business to function, how you need law to grow a business, to scale a business, how law is embedded into every aspect of the business world. And that's part of the reason why even I wrote my dissertation. Like I chose to write my dissertation on a very different area to what most lecturers tend to see. So I wrote my dissertation on regulating Airbnb. So I chose the business and linked the legal aspects into it, because at that time I was fascinated by brands and companies and VC-backed businesses and how they were scaling, and how a company like Airbnb, for instance, how like it was called the good, the bad, and the ugly, because Airbnb's trying to grow, but like real estate law and local laws and different kind of laws are trying to kind of pin down this business, how are they kind of maneuvering, how are they still growing, how are they still scaling. So that was always what fascinated me, and I always knew that I wanted to try and get to that point of being a sports lawyer. So for me, it was always a case of, okay,
Okay.
this be the input to kind of get me there really.
Right, understood. And then you moving on to your time at Adidas, although brief, my question here is what all your learnings there? How's the training? You've been in a big company. How was it being exposed to potentially athlete partnerships and marketing campaigns in that sense?
No, Adidas was awesome, man. I loved it. So when I was at DWF, the law firm that I trained at, so we had to do a secondment if you're in the London office, and we work at DWF. Two of our clients were City Football Group and Adidas, and I knew that I wanted to. This was kind of going to be my, because I was always trying to reverse engineer my way to being a sports lawyer. So I knew I had to kind of get this opportunity, interviewed for it, was successful in getting it. And for me, like working there was awesome, working with like some of the smartest minds and people in the sports ecosystem, from brand to marketing to sales to retail. And one of the things that I learned there, and that we always used to drum home in the legal team, and the team that I work with was so big on this, and my old supervisor, who's now GC at Castor, was we had the buzzword for what our job was within the legal function at Adidas was to protect and enable. And those are two words that I carry everywhere now and into every role that I've moved on to, because your job is to protect the business, because sometimes lawyers can actually get in the way. And I always say there's two types of lawyers. There's the lawyers who get in the way and get obsessed and bogged down with the minutiae of the clauses and how things should look. And they almost forget about the type of deal that they're doing. And that's where the enable bit comes in, because your job is to enable the deal to happen. Your job isn't to be a roadblocker.
Mm.
Those are two words that I implement into everything I do going forward professionally. And it was just a great time there in terms of learning more about, that was kind of my initial taste into commercial law and contracts, because prior to that, I'd only done one seat, and my seat was in regards to litigation. So I was able to work on commercial contracts, whether that was individual athlete boot deals, marketing deals. We're doing really, really cool stuff there at the time. Like we're doing stuff for, like, at the time we're working on like the Arsenal TFL collaboration for the kit. We worked on the Murky FC stuff that Stormzy was doing, because Adidas played a role within that. We're working on stuff for United, for different kinds of talent, really. I think even at the time, Reebok was being sold to ABG. So many exciting projects, and like one of the best working environments I've worked in. Culturally, a really, really good place. The way everyone's together, I love the environment there, whereby like everyone will kind of stop at lunchtime, their work, and have lunch together, whether you was the VP of brand or whether you was someone in the legal team or paralegal. Like everyone would sit together, chat. Like I think one of the best things there that Nick got me to do early on was, like, he gave me a list of people within the business, from brand, sales, marketing, all different departments, sort of the key people in those kind of realms. He said, like, like approach them. If you want, I can do it for you. I was like, no, I'll just do it myself. So, because I want to build the relationships. It was like, here's the list of names, like 20 different names, calls in their diary, understand who they are, what their role is, and how I can support them from a legal perspective. And that for me is game changing. And I brought that into every role that I worked when I came into Baller League, I did the exact same thing there. And it's those little gems. And again, when we're going to get onto sporting directors, and you hear them speak about this all the time. When you go into a new role, understanding who's in the building, who's doing what, how you can support them, et cetera, man.
Great. You joined Onside Law, which is like
Yeah.
a top firm in the sports sector in Europe and UK specifically, I think in March 2023. Environment like, how did it differ from your expectations in terms of the pace, the clients, the type of deals you potentially worked with?
Yeah, no, Onside was brilliant, man. And like you mentioned, like Onside is a great firm, like effectively work with every major governing body in sport, from FIFA to England rugby to England cricket, lawyers to West Ham Football Club, Yannick Sinner, Jude Bellingham. And it was great. It was great for me because one of the things that's so amazing about working for a firm like Onside Law is you have partners that enable the juniors. They enable you, they trust you, they give you responsibility to get involved in deals, to lead on things, to drive things forward. They trust your perspective. They give you because you can. I know people that work in law firms. You can work in a law firm and be micromanaged and only do the stuff that's at your level, or you can work in a law firm and work in environments where people trust you and kind of give you the rope to go away and be free. And that was a great place for me in terms of doing that. And some of the things I got to get involved in, like some of the things for some of the clients and people that we work with and work on endorsement deals. A lot of the work that I did there, and just to kind of give you the full context of my background, I'm a commercial lawyer, and effectively what that means is I work on commercial contracts primarily. So whether that's sponsorship, endorsement, brand deals, licensing, services agreements, supplier contracts. So getting involved in really exciting stuff. Like I'm a massive football fan, massive tennis fan, so working on branded endorsement deals, negotiating them for talent with the likes of Nike, Head, Gucci, Moncler, like household name brands. And an environment like a firm like Onside Law is a firm whereby like you're trusted to work in collaboration. Like any exciting work that comes in, like the partners trust you and want to get you involved on that. And this is where it really links well with Athlete Investor Summers. We were building a really exciting practice there whereby we work on this new emerging space of athlete. I won't call it athlete or creator investment because some of it is almost a bit of endorsement and sweat equity coming in, but we got to work on some really cool stuff there. So we worked on like deals for where like talent would be getting sweat equity within brands. And we worked on quite a number of high profile ones that you probably see in a lot of billboards right now with cool brands like Sprout and Kick Game and Percival, and really, really enjoyed it. And it kind of helped me to build on my foundations of the things I learned at Adidas and just take it to another new level. It's quite fortunate to work. So one of our main clients there, West Ham Football Club, they haven't got an internal legal function. So we effectively service all of their commercial contractual needs. So being able to work on stuff there, sleeve deals, front of shirt deals, and just cutting my teeth into that sort of work, even at a junior level with the support of partners and a team and feeling trusted. Because when you work in an environment, I'm one of those people whereby I want to feel as though I'm given enough rope, trust it, lead me to crack on with things with the support. And that's really important to me. And that was a great place for me to kind of do that and build on my experience.
Right. Sounds like a very pivotal, foundational layer for your career so far. Still building on top of that, in terms of Onside Law, you co-wrote a piece negotiating contracts with sporting directors. So obviously my first question here is, what pushed you to write this piece? And then we can go towards the deeper layers of questions around that.
Yes, I think for sporting directors, I think what really pushed me to write that was obviously being with the ASD for a number of years, interviewing a lot of sporting directors. You can see a lot of the time whereby there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good roles, and seeing how the space is really changing and the space has become really more sophisticated in terms of how they're recruited, how they kind of go about it, and just personally knowing that some of them, before they go into a new role, they get their contracts checked and reviewed by lawyers. Even just knowing that some of them, like when they're dismissed and they're doing a really, really good job and driving stuff forward for the club and how that's kind of done. So just working with my colleague, Alex Clark at the time, who's a very exceptional employment lawyer, kind of co-wrote a piece together to kind of just bring some thought leadership to the space, even how the space is kind of changing and shifting. Like we're now seeing the media announcing like sporting directors being hired by clubs as if they're almost players. and being able to kind of just provide that thought leadership piece around, okay, what are the things to look out for? What are the things to negotiate around notice period, around happens if the pay, around gardening leave, all these different key bits, but really being clear on your job description and how that affects you, maybe if it comes to stuff in relation to termination, for instance, and really being clear on, okay, what are the roles and responsibilities? Because one of the big things we speak a lot about at the ASD is, when we speak to a lot of sporting directors, is this piece around role clarity and knowing what the role is and really being clear on that and who has sign off and what's your remit. Do you cover the academy as well? Do you cover the women's team? Some sport directors cover the women's team, some don't. Some sit on the board, some don't. So really being clear on that in the contract, and I thought it was a really good opportunity to kind of share that, put that out there for people who I kind of personally know and want to see do well, but also just for the wider industry.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's funny because the next thought in my head was I was going to deep dive into role ambiguity, but it's fine. I mean, one thing I do know, because I've done a piece on sporting directors, and it's a fascinating evolution around the role over time. And as you have mentioned, is level an insight into like the board level. So there's a case where some sporting directors have the right to potentially be given a board seat. In some cases, in most cases not, but there's the need for sporting directors to have visibility across the financial, strategic, informational layer. How do you contractually strategize around that to make sure that your client or the sporting director that you're trying to serve is protected and is, given that sort of like solid foundation going into that role?
Yeah, I think it's the same in any job, really. I think it's a thing whereby, like, if there's an expectation of you, you want to try and be as clear about that in the contract as possible. And the reason why you want to be as clear about that as possible is because in any contract to do with employment, there'll always be a termination provision. And the termination provision will speak about it could speak about misconduct, it could speak about performance, and it could speak about various different things. So you want to be really super clear. If you're being asked and told that, okay, you're going to come in and your role is not going to cover player recruitment, and you're being dismissed and you're being the fall guy for player recruitment maybe not being viewed or perceived to be going well, then I think that's a bit difficult and harsh if that was not what the role that you were hired for was. So I think it's about really being clear and upfront about that. And I always say this in every single job that I do, and even the job that I'm in now. If I put every single thing I wanted to put into a contract, the other side would never sign it. So there has to be a kind of common sense approach sometimes to, and that goes back to my original point about not being in the way, not over lawyering, not being a roadblocker, trying to enable the deal to happen, whatever context and environment that is. But at the same time, that protect word, always try and protect yourself. If you know it's important to you, always try and protect yourself however you can.
Yeah, protect yourself at all times. So moving on to Redress Ventures. So I think you're a scout there. Can you just give us the context layer on that? How does that sort of like role as a scout intersect with the sports and entertainment industry as a whole?
Yeah, so I got to know Tom, who founded Red Rice Ventures. And Tom's a really great guy. So Tom started Red Rice Ventures. They were early investors into Castor. They backed some really, really cool companies like Pure Sport, which is one of the fastest growing consumer brands in the UK. Companies like Biorotation, where you can rent some really, really cool fashion pieces, by the way. And at the time, like, Tom was just looking to build more in the sort of sports ecosystem because they're more traditional VCs, and they've kind of accidentally kind of got into this whole athlete collective world. So you've probably heard of the likes of Apex and Players Fund and all these different entities who are doing amazing stuff. Athletic Ventures, who I know quite well, Arthur from there's on my advisory board for the Athlete Investor Summit. And they kind of accidentally fell into it because they kind of got Andy Murray into the Castor deal and worked quite closely with Andy. So it's just about me coming on board, for myself to learn more about VC, to help and support, but then also is almost to kind of make those introductions, companies and brands that I see, because I get a lot of people contact me and kind of share their decks and opportunities with me. So it was always just about being able to kind of just support those guys in a kind of informal way and see how we can kind of mutually kind of benefit, really. But I love those guys and what they're doing and trying to build. And I always say that more, and I speak to a lot of traditional VCs who are trying to get more into the athlete ecosystem. There's so many that do it and don't do it publicly. There's some who want to do it a little bit more, but I think that they're very, very best placed to kind of also serve and operate in that space because they have the track record. They have the track record of investing into the City Mappers, the Deliveroos, all these companies that we see day to day. They have the track record of doing that. They can speak to athletes because athletes need good advisors around them, and they can speak to their experiences of doing these deals and why they backed Deliveroo and not this company, and why they missed out on this company that was a slam dunk, but they didn't think it was a slam dunk, and how they got it wrong. And they can quite easily speak to a lot of this stuff because they've been in the game.
Are there any particular trends that you're seeing from that role in terms of like athlete-led or sport-focused investments?
Yeah, I definitely see one thing I'm seeing now is consumers hot. Consumer is hot right now. There's a period of time where D2C and consumer wasn't hot, but we're seeing right now a lot of, especially around like beauty, skincare, very, very hot right now. I think even like Sunday Times drop a thing called Sunday Times Fast Track 100, which is the 100 fastest growing companies in the UK. And about 90% of it was consumer. Like consumer is very hot right now. Like you literally see everywhere, like Adenola, Fine, Refi, all these brands in terms, whether it's clothing, whether it's skincare, whether it's beauty, topicals, all these different sort of verticals like consumer is hot. There was a period of time when a lot of VCs didn't want to kind of plow into it, weren't quite sure. And it's an interesting one, consumer, because it requires a heavy push on marketing. And traditionally, VCs don't want to spend too much. They don't want to invest in businesses that rely too heavily on marketing and CPAs and all that kind of stuff. Consumer right now is hot, man. And that's one of the verticals that Tom and Redrice invest into.
So you mentioned earlier that you sit at or you're focused on commercial law, and you sit at the intersection of sports athletes, brand deals, licensing, and so on and so forth. So in terms of this is like my sort of like my hypothetical thesis here, that legal structure or legal strategy within the sports structure is now a central theme within football business. If this is the case, give us an example of how the legal thinking that has changed over time has changed the outcome of specific brand deals or sponsorship, partnership deals, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's a really, really good question. I'm trying to think of what example I want to give to you. I think we're definitely seeing it in terms of traditional sports formats. So we can clearly see now, like whether you look at football with us with Ball League, whether you look at golf with TGL, Live Golf coming in and trying to kind of disrupt things there, whether you look at what Unrivaled trying to do to basketball, you can almost see how traditional sports formats are almost trying to change how they're doing things, how they're operating. Like there's a reason why the 100, like the England cricket brought in the 100 to kind of change how cricket is kind of perceived and viewed. Like it almost feels as though like a lot of sports formats, they're trying to change their structures because they're seen, or maybe they're concerned about whether that's viewership, whether that's the product, whether that's attendances, whether that's how it's operating, how it's consumed. I think that's a really interesting landscape. Maybe not purely from a legal strategy, but legal is involved in that in the sense of it requires contracts to be drawn up. It requires a thought process around how that model works, how that model operates. Because, and the reason why I say that is because a lot of sport is primarily reliant on broadcast revenues. And if you look at the primary sport in football, in Premier League, which is the most popular sport to consume and watch globally, the rights for the last couple of years and the last couple of cycles have not increased. They've kind of stayed the same. And then you then translate that into other sports, whether that's like netball and whether that's rugby, for example. They have to find new ways, new formats, new structures from a governance perspective and from a league structure perspective to kind of unlock new opportunities to kind of build those businesses.
Yeah.
Kind of, in a way, think differently because they can't rely on TNT anymore. They can't rely on Sky Sports anymore. They need to change the structure and how they're operating in order to be sustainable effectively. And I
Right.
think that's a really, really interesting space and one to definitely watch going forward.
Right. Understood. So moving on to something that I'm sure you're very passionate about, which is the sort of like a forum, the summit that you created, you founded, the Investor Summit. I think it's in the second year, going to the third year now, next year. So this space was created to blend investing and wealth creation targeted towards athletes. You secured Evelyn Partners, a $62 billion wealth management firm, as your official partner for this year. How has this partnership sort of signaled the credibility and the ambitions of what you're building, and what opportunities has this partnership created as a cascading effect?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Evelyn are great. And for me, I think I like the work that they're doing, for example, they partner with Saracens, Manchester City Women, and they bring a lot of thought leadership to the space, and we're working with them a lot to build out more of that. And I think it's interesting because the main reason I set up the Athlete Investor Summit was because like I know people who play the game, who are in the game, who play sport, looking at my own self and how if I was an athlete, I wouldn't want to go down the traditional route of being a coach, being a pundit, almost seeing the wave that we've seen in the US in the last 20 to 30 years, whether we want to look as far back as Shaq invested into Google in 1999, or even further than that, and look at Magic Johnson and what those guys were doing, to more recent examples with LeBron and with the obviously, God rest his soul, Kobe Bryant, and many, many different athletes. And we're slowly seeing that, whether you want to look at Roger Federer with On and the deal we did with Uniqlo towards the end, et cetera, et cetera. And we're in a really exciting space now whereby more athletes in Europe want to invest, but they don't understand how to, or they don't know what to invest in. So it's about providing the education, and that's what the Athlete Investor Summit is all about: is to educate, connect, and empower. And working with Evelyn partners who have skin in the game, they work with various different athletes at high level. They have the relationships at club and governing body level as well. And we're going to work with more partners to kind of push more into the space. So I'm starting to go on the education, because for me, the education is paramount. And you see in the athletes in Europe that are investing at scale, it's not as common in America. America is light years ahead of us. Like we're sleeping and they're sprinting. Like you speak to college athletes, they have their own funds, they're investing into companies, they're doing deals at a college level, not even like, let alone professional level, at a college level. So for me, the education is so important, and the empowerment, because let's just even take away athlete from investing. Investing altogether has always been a space and a place where it's about, like, it's always kind of been like a hidden thing of like, if you know, you know kind of basis. But it's obviously been democratized now in the last 5-10 years. Like we can ourselves, like me and you, can go onto free trade and Coinbase and eToro and these platforms and invest our money into crypto, into the stock market, into funds, ETFs, etc., etc. But focusing on athletes specifically, more of them want to learn, more of them have an appetite to learn. And a lot of the athletes that are doing this at scale in Europe, they're ones who they they have the first and the knowledge to do this. Maybe that, like within some of them, like that I know, they have family members who are in the space and have opened up doors for them, which is good, which is great. But we want to almost push that further and open that even up more, because it's not even just about the top 1% elite athlete. I always say, what about that BMX rider that's going to compete in LA in 3 years' time? Their net worth is K, or that their net worth is 50K and not 200 million. What opportunities exist for that athlete to have the education at their level? Like whether it's in terms of them investing, whether it's in terms of them running their own businesses, because people forget, we get obsessed with the elite sports where people are making a lot of money. There's a lot of money in football. There's a lot of money in cricket if you're playing in the IPL. There's a lot of money in if you're on the grid and you're a Formula One driver. There's a lot of money if you're a top 10 tennis player. Like I've seen these contracts, but most athletes that compete in the sport, some of them aren't even professional. Some of them like work a 9 to 5. Like we had Daniel 10th in Pure Sport. We used to see her at Pure Sport and building Pure Sport. He invested into Pure Sport whilst he was playing rugby, and it was his friends' businesses that he was playing rugby with. Like he was playing rugby for Newcastle Falcons. Like, doing that for him, he's not going to be able to live on that forever. Like the same way, if you're a top 1% tennis player and you're a child, like Alcaraz, for example, will never have to work a day in his life when he ends up retiring and wins like 20 slams. So I'm so passionate about the education and how we share that and how we kind of drive that and push that forward. Because a lot of these athletes that are competing in these sports, they're like me. They're from inner city towns and cities, and they need the access and they need the education. They need the support. So I'm super, super passionate about that now.
Right. No, it's super, super inspiring, that side of the work that you do. In terms of the Baller League, which is obviously where you're the legal counsel there, I think the Baller League UK sold out to the O2 Arena with over, let's call it 1 million views for sure, across social platforms. From a business perspective, I wrote a post about this, but not specifically around this question. What is the traditional 11-a-side football, so like commercial model failing at that Baller League is successfully exploiting and commercializing?
There's a lot of issues there. Like, and this is one thing I always say. It's like I'm a massive traditional football fan. I go to Arsenal nearly every home game, season ticket holder. I sit in the North Bank. I go away up and down the country whenever I get the chance to. I was in the away end at Newcastle, and Gabriel headed it home and gave one of the best days of my year. I think like traditional football has a lot to work on it, and there's so many issues. I've been speaking about on my podcast for the last 5 years. Like, where do you want to begin? Like the lack of fan engagement. Like I say this all the time. Like I'm a massive Arsenal fan. You can see the shirt in the background. You've got Fly Emirates as our front of shirt sponsor. We've had it since 2000, since we had the naming rights in 2006. When do Arsenal? Like I go to Dubai on holiday, I go to Bali on holiday, I fly with Emirates. I loyally support my football club home and away. When do Arsenal ever send me a push notification for 10% off via Emirates? Like sponsors, like I've seen it in the contracts and I've been on the calls with sponsors. Football sponsorship is even so different to what it was before. Before it used to be about slapping a logo on the shirt and getting brand awareness and visibility. Now sponsors care about ROI. They care about impressions. They care about engagement. They care about audiences. That's even just point number one. Point number two is the viewership and the consumption. In the UK, I don't know what it's like for you where you are, but in the UK, we have to have TNT Sport, Amazon, we have to have Sky Sports. The other day, I watched the Conor Ben and Eubank fight. I've got to now take out a DAZN subscription and then cancel it after to watch the boxing because it's not on Sky. To be fair, it's on pay-per-view anyway, but then even though it's on pay-per-view, I'm now locked into this free trial for 7 days. All these different costs. And you add it all up together, the cost of these 3 different platforms to consume football. And it's the cost of having a season ticket to probably go and watch a team like Burnley or Leeds play in the Premier League. Like, that's just even, and then the Premier League are more concerned. Sorry, we're going on this passionate rant, but like the Premier League are more concerned with spending tens and hundreds of millions of pounds a year in fighting piracy and illegal streaming rather than using that money to do a JV with an Apple, with a Netflix, to bring a Premier League TV or whatever you want to call it to fans in the UK to consume the product. And like, where else you want to go after that, Ibrahim? Do you want to talk about the ticket prices and how much it costs to go and watch your team play? You speak to any fan that supports the team in the Premier League, they'll always tell you about the cost of watching their team play, the dynamic pricing that's now coming into football. You can come to Baller League and watch 6 matches. Like we've got a match day today. You can come to Baller League and watch 6 matches of football, £14. And it's good football, by the way. Like some of our players, ex-academy players at Arsenal, Newcastle, some of them are even ex-pros themselves. Very, very good, highly technical, small-sided, very engaging. And that's just like, there's so many issues. Like, and I love traditional football. Like, I love it, but also equally, like, there's too much football on TV.
Right.
It's too much football on TV. Some of the matches aren't engaging. Like yesterday was a great game. I'm not just saying that because I'm an Arsenal fan, but like, I don't want to, like, I love the Premier League. I respect every team that's in there, but I don't want to watch on Sky Sports Burnley versus Leeds. I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch Nottingham Forest play Sunderland on Super Sunday. I don't want to watch it. Like,
Right.
and there's so many different aspects with football, whether it's too many games on TV, whether it's about the type of game that's on TV, whether it's in terms of the cost of it, the viewership, how you consume it. And we're just flipping the narrative, man. We're flipping the narrative. We're bringing something fun, exciting, engaging. Some people, they think it because they've not seen it, that it's a bit of a gimmick, but it's not. The quality of the football, like I'm a football purist. The quality of the football is exceptional. And that's what those are the things I probably say are the differences between traditional football. And I'm saying that as someone who loves traditional football and loves consuming it and watches it religiously, man.
Right, understood. So, I mean, what you say to the idea around, and this is my own personal take on this. So, you have this innovator's dilemma where you have the current incumbents being considerably threatened by a new entrant, which is, the Baller League, Kings League, Icon Leagues, these different 5, 6, 7-a-side leagues. What do you say to the idea that the current traditional teams should be partnering with them, have their own sort of like subsidiary clubs within those leagues? So call it like Manchester United, Sixes, like a very branded sort of like team for that. You have it in basketball where Real Madrid already have their own NBA team. Manchester United used to have a team. They want to have a new team again, NBA. Why don't these current big clubs who have the cash flow to do it, as opposed to chasing piracy and wasting money fighting different legal battles, they could just invest in these existing leagues or partner with them and have that, have the ability to benefit of that data of the customer, which is what is ideally driving football, driving, streaming rights and streaming valuations. What do you think about that?
I think it's an interesting point, but again, like I think the two things can coexist. It's not like people need to understand. It's not traditional football versus new emerging formats. It's not the PGA Tour versus Live Golf. It's not Premier League versus Baller League. It's not Unrivaled versus WNBA. All of this stuff can coexist together. It's just that the traditionals need to do better at what they're doing, because you can be a fan of Baller League and be like, I'm a fan of Baller League and I'm a fan of Arsenal. I want Arsenal to serve me better as a fan of their club. I want the Premier League to do better for me as somebody who loves to consume Super Sunday and listen to like people like Daniel Sturridge and when like Gil Clichy and like all these people that they have on there commentating on punditry and talking about football. Like I love listening to these guys talk about football and watching it. And when Gary Neville does the Gary Neville podcast, I love consuming the content. But like they just need to do a little bit better. So a good example is today, like the Arsenal game happened yesterday. There's a guy on YouTube, you might have heard of him, called Culture Cams. Like I love listening to his post-match take more than I love the post-match take of any pundit that Sky put on Sky Sports put on YouTube or TNT,
including Henry.
No, but it's true. Like I was on the panel the other day, and I was the same conference. Robbie from AFTV spoke. It's like Robbie's been doing what he's doing since I want to say 2011-12 season. It's like clubs are now doing like the fan channel based stuff. Brands are now doing it, and he started doing it, and he was doing that way over 10 years ago. Like, where do you want to begin? Like the Sidemen and Beta Squad do the videos of like, guess who the whoever is, for example, on YouTube. They've been doing that for years. You now see Premier League clubs now doing guess who the ex-Arsenal footballer is, or guess who the footballer is out of a row of 6 people.
Yeah.
So it's like they're piggybacking off of like what even content creators are doing, because they need new ideas. They need to engage audiences. They need to engage fans. Like, I think it's never going to be a traditional versus emerging. Both can coexist. I think everyone just needs to learn from each other, and you could be a fan of both, man, just like I am, man.
Understood. Yeah, it's a well midpoint. So in terms of something that is very interesting to me personally is image rights licensing. What's the difference there? How do you explain that to a naive audience or an audience who is not familiar with these terms?
Can I skip this question, bro? You can edit this out. Is that okay?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks,
I'll move on. My bad. Okay, let's talk about trends in endorsement market. So my idea around content-led partnerships is that you have an entity which is a brand, which is a content creator, but you also have the brand itself, which is the agency or let's call it the club. How do you protect both sides? Who do you sort of like, what is the structure around these sort of like contracts when you're creating the contract to begin with?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to my point about those two words, man, protect and enable. Like if you're like, I've done deals brand side, I've done deals talent side, rights holder side. I think all you want to do is most is protect the side that you're on, but also enable the deal to happen at the end of the day. So it just comes down to, okay, what are the key and important points and levers? A good example, let's take a talent agreement, for example. You're working with a hotshot superstar, future superstar footballer or tennis player that let's say, for example, they're 19, they're signing their first ever deal with a Nike and Adidas. Nike or Adidas take a super wide brand category when they're doing brand deals. So they'll almost take all of clothing, all of footwear. So then if you know how tennis deals operate, for instance, you know that a lot of tennis players, like Alcaraz has a deal with Louis Vuitton, Yannick has a deal with Gucci. Nearly every tennis player has a deal with a watch company, for example, or they have a deal with like a Whoop, for example. So if you're not clear when you're doing that 10-year deal or 5-year deal for that tennis player who's 19 and might be the next Roger or might be the next Rafa, depending on who you think is the GOAT, I think it's
Or
Novak.
Djokovic, yeah.
I think it's Novak. I think Novak's my GOAT. Although I love the other two as well, just in case anyone comes for me in the comments. So if you know that, then when you're doing that deal, you need to be thinking about the future. And when you're doing that deal, you need to be able to come in there and carve. And that's what I always try and do whenever I'm doing any deal. Okay, carving out here. Whether you're doing a sponsorship deal for a club. Okay, if we agree to this deal if we let them have all the financial services, that means that we can't do let me give you a better example of that. If we let them have all of let's look at that one. Like if we let them have all of financial services and trading platforms, and they're a bank, that means we can't do a deal with Coinbase. We can't do a deal with eToro. We can't do a deal with Robinhood. So then we're screwing ourselves because we were lazy. And like, you know what I mean? And it's the same thing with the tennis player that might be the next Roger. Like, if we don't carve out underwear, he can't do a deal with Calvin Klein. If we don't carve out jeans, he can't do a deal with Levi's. If we don't carve out New Era, he can't do a headwear or a cap deal. If we don't carve out performance, to be fair, it might be difficult for Nike to let you do this in the brand. But if we don't carve out certain types of watches, he can't do a deal with Whoop.
Yeah.
And then we're limiting the income, and that's what it comes down to protecting. Then we're not protecting our athlete by doing that.
So it seems to me, from what I'm hearing, is that you have to sit down with the athlete to understand what their vision is for the sort of like the athlete's branded journey or their sponsorship journey. Understand what ideally they want to be partnered with, but also what kind of brand do they want to see themselves associated with over time. And that way it's easier to then start carving out these things from the very beginning.
It's not always just sitting down with the athlete, because also as well, like sometimes the agents don't know. And that's why it's important as a lawyer when you're in the sports law space to really be commercially minded.
Okay.
People always say like oh, I want to be a sports lawyer, but what is a sports lawyer? A sports lawyer is just a lawyer that's working in the sports industry. But that's where your job is, to be super commercial and really think about these things and almost think about from the perspective of, okay, if it was me, where could this athlete go? And that's where it comes down to being commercial, understanding sport, like. By doing a bad deal, like those Nike Adidas contracts end up being throughout a player's or an athlete's trajectory of their career. If you do a bad deal, so it's about thinking about these things. Okay, how can I protect? Like, how do the deals work? Like, we've seen Beckham in the Calvin Klein underwear. We've seen athletes doing the Gucci's, the Louis Vuittons, the Burberrys. Okay, so if I'm working with this tennis player or this footballer, and I know that, okay, he could be the superstar, how can I protect this person? For some athletes, it might not matter. The other side might not let you have the carve out, but at least try and test it and see how that can work. I think that's very important.
Right. So we're coming towards the end of the podcast, but I have a few sections just to cover very quickly. So, I mean, you're most likely going to be someone that a lot of people who want to venture into the sports industry or commercial law, as you say, use as a template to try to model their career, as you have done with others. So my question to you here is, what are the in a world where like, you know, different fields are getting disrupted as a result of AI and the algorithms getting better, the chips getting better, Moore's law taking place. What specific skills do you think future commercial lawyers should take into consideration when trying to go into the sports industry?
I think the best thing that they can do is just keep up to date, man. Keep up to date, keep learning, listen to podcasts like yourselves, keep learning, keep understanding, because the space and the environment is changing and shifting. But also things come in waves and things come in cycles. Like, I remember on my podcast about 5 years ago speaking to a friend of mine who's a kit designer, and was speaking about the fashion of football and how football kits are now, like, they now transcend sport, and how, like, you can use it to build a brand as a club. And you're seeing what Arsenal did with the different types of kits, the TFL kit, the Jamaica-inspired Carnival kit, all these different kinds of things, really. So follow these things, follow these trends, understand them, because then when you get into these environments, you get it straight away. Like it's an interesting one because like you can learn how like deals in tennis are structured differently to deals in football. But you can learn about this stuff, but like when you're in the job, you can learn about it before. Like being a fan of a club and being someone who plays a sport can also help you as well in terms of your understanding of how these things work and operate. So I think the best thing to do is stay up to date and build content, man. Like for me, when I started What the Footy, a lot of that for me at the time was it was two things. It was me wanting to try and, like I mentioned, reverse engineer my way into where I wanted to kind of get to. So I could like speak to people who I wanted to build the connections with and have the contacts with and have the conversations with. But then also it was about me being this disgruntled Arsenal fan and wanting to understand. It was my curiosity about understanding how that's why it's called What the Footy, what the happens behind the scenes in football. I wanted to understand about like why is it that this club's spending more money, but this club's spending less money and they're winning more. Like, I wanted to understand these different questions of like how does scouting work? How do sport narratives play a role within football clubs? The trends around brand and the fashion of football and how different cultural relevant moments can come into sport and build a brand, like what PSG did and what they were doing with Jordan, the collaborations there, all across the board in terms of formation and tactics and how the game is changing and shifting. It was all around my curiosity. So if you're someone that's curious, start building content, whether it's a newsletter, YouTube, TikTok, what you're doing, because along the way, like even with what you're building, it's opening doors for you to build out the vehicles that you mentioned before we jumped on the podcast. Like you're now building around tech, you're building around the club advisory, and that's all come about because you started the podcast. So if you want to get to the sports industry, just start doing it now. I speak to like people I know at the senior level. The other day I interviewed a guest that we're going to have on the ASD podcast that's going to come out this week. She played and she played for Arsenal. Like she's always continuously learning, always doing more, stretching herself to learn, the appetite for learning, for doing more. It's important and vital if you want to get into the sports industry because everyone's doing it. So if you're not doing it, how are you going to get in?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think, yeah, it's a good point you're mentioning. One question I have around What the Footy is, obviously, it's, you know, you've been consistent. You're balancing that with ASD, with your job, with the scouting, with the volunteering, you know, like educational stuff you do with back to kids, but also aspiring lawyers, with the guest speaking that you do. How are you managing your time? How are you allocating your time? You know, like do you not fear quality over quantity? Like, don't you fear the ability to keep, because I have this thing where if I start something, I don't want to stop doing it. I want to be consistent. Did you have that fear of pushing yourself too much, like basically stretching yourself too thin in that sense?
No, I don't. And the reason why I don't is because of all the things you mentioned there. Some things take priority and like there's a pecking order. So like the day to day for me is always and will be paramount. It's the day to day for me. Like even when you mentioned the podcast for me is below the summit. But also like I've made peace with that. I'll never forget there's a guy I met. Because I always talk to people wherever I am, and that's how I meet a lot of people. So I met this guy when I was coming back from Southampton to catch a train at Southampton Airport Park. When I met this guy and he built the tech. So when you go to a beach club on holiday and you book a bed, for example, so his underlying tech is what a lot of companies use. And then when everyone's going back to the office in COVID and having to book to go back in, his tech was also being used for that. And he said to me, he said that when you're juggling a lot of different plates, like someone's spinning theirs faster. So it's like, but you have to make peace with that. That's what he said to me. Like you can't compare yourself to. So a good example is this. My podcast will never be at the scale of, and it's not me just putting negativity on myself, but I can't compare myself to building my podcast to the scale of Steve Bartlett. It's true. It's true. Like,
But
because
let me interrupt you there, if you
go
don't
on, go on.
mind. There's this thing called everyone is playing different games. So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I'm not sure if you know Harry Stebbins. So his
Oh yeah,
podcast is 20 VC.
top
He's playing
podcast.
different games to Stephen Bartlett, and you see the result. Everyone is playing different game. But sorry, that's
So it's like, how can I like, because people, comparison is the thief of joy, and I'm so big on that. Contentment, and it's a verse in the Bible, actually. It says contentment, it's something about, edit this out, bro. Like, I've forgotten the verse in it.
it's
But,
fine.
the point I'm trying to get to is that being content is really good. And it's like, how can I compare myself to someone who is doing it every day. He's doing that podcast every day, grinding it, doing 2 a week. I'm not even doing 1 a week. Like, you know what I mean? So how can I expect the same results? Do you know what I mean? So I think there's beauty in being content and knowing that what are you working towards? And I think that's why, like, you asked a great question at the start. What are you working towards and what's important to you? The most important thing to me outside of my day job is the Athlete Investor Summit, bro. That's the most important thing to me, what I'm building with that. Then all the rest of that follows. All the rest
Right.
of that follows. And
Understood.
and again, the beauty of life is, and you mentioned another thing about, you asked me, why did I want to be in law forever? Like, nothing has to be forever. And that's another beauty of life. Everything could just be a stepping stone to getting you to where you want to be. But the most important thing is knowing where you want to be. And I think another thing about some people is that they're not sure sometimes, and that's fine. It's okay to not be sure. But I always say, start with the end in mind and work backwards. And it's like, okay, if you know that, okay, big picture. So even like yourself, like, there's a reason why you started the Football of Economy podcast. There's a reason why you're doing these different verticals. You know, I know you know what the end goal is mind. And the things that you're doing is going to get you there. It may not, like, you may not get there, or where you want to get to may change and shift because you might do something else. And like, who knows, you start this podcast with a certain end goal in mind. You might end up wanting to start creating a fund to invest into clubs because you might meet a guy that you interview one day that has a lot of money and wants you to kind of create an investment vehicle with him. That wasn't your goal, but the things you were doing to get to your goal led you there. But just embrace it, man. That's what I just say. Just embrace it, enjoy it, man. Enjoy
Yeah.
every day of it.
No, honestly, you're stating facts in that sense. Just be like water, and everything falls into place. So I just I'll just move into the final segment, which is just a rapid fire segment. So I think the favorite question I have always for guests, because I just like to get a sense of what your library is like. So what book has impacted you the most, be it in football or in life? Take it as you want.
It's really good because I've got quite a few, man.
You can give 3 if you want.
Yeah, it's 3 of them, man. As a man thinketh, it's actually a verse in the Bible, but as a man thinketh, James Allen, very, very good book. It just talks about the ideas of, like, kind of what you put out into the world and the things that you say to yourself, how you kind of communicate. Second book changed my life, bro. Like, The Four Agreements, one of the shortest, most simplest books. It just talks about the 4 agreements for life. And like, for me, those are just like things that I absolutely live by, bro, because you can overcomplicate life and the things that need to be done. But the 4 agreements, it just says, be impeccable with your word. Basically, have integrity, stand on business, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. A very, very simple book and a guide for life. And then the third one is Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday, man. That book shifted my perception on a lot of things, man. Ryan Holiday is a real, very, very, very good author. He breaks the book down into body, mind, and spirit. And I'll never forget this. I actually met one of the co-founders years ago of at HelloFresh. She said to me, take care of your body, mind, and spirit. Otherwise, you're no use to yourself and anyone. Like, what
Oh,
Ryan does in the book is that he breaks down in the different strands of body, mind, and spirit. He breaks down little things like the importance of journaling, of decluttering, of simplifying things, of taking walks, all these different aspects, bro. Like, a very, very good book. I'll probably say it's probably my favorite book, but yeah, those 3 books, highly recommend them.
right. Well, those are very good books. You're a guest lecturer at Solent University. What does social giving mean to you? You know, what does that look like? And what was that time for you? I mean, I'm pretty sure it's probably ongoing or something you're going to continue in the future. But what was the key takeaway from that period?
Yeah, I'm just remembering that these are quick fires and I'm just listing off 3 books, but I'll keep this one quick fire. I think the main takeaway for me is just, it's just inspiring others. I think for me, I'm very grateful that I've met a lot of people along my journey who kind of sewed into me, supported me. They didn't have to do it. They didn't have to respond to my LinkedIn message, my email, me asking them to come for a coffee. They didn't have to do that. A lot of people have done that for me. So I think for me, I feel a big duty to do that for others. And I think everyone should do it, man, because a lot of people play a lot of important roles within how we get to where we are and help us along the way. So that's a really important thing to me, man.
And the final question is, we're 10 years down the line, where are you, Paul?
10 years down the line, where am I? I want to go back to where I started, man. Still feeling challenged and enjoying the process, man. I'm not going to define it based off of like role, position, all those kind of things. For me, into, I always say like, and it's a line from Drake that I kind of live by, and I'm a massive Drake fan. It's like he says, the moment I stop having fun with it, I'll be done with it. For me, for me, it's about learning. It's about learning. It's about having fun. It's about feeling challenged. And the moment I stop having fun with it, I'll just move on to the next thing. But that's all it's about for me, man. Enjoying the process.
Perfect. Paul, thank you so much for an incredible, insightful, crucial conversation. Thank you so much.
No, Ibrahim, thank you very much for your time and inviting me. I know it took a while for us to kind of lock this one in, but no, I appreciate it. Love the work that you're doing, mate. Keep up the good work, bro.
Perfect. Thank you. Fantastic. We highly encourage everyone to look into the Athlete Investor Summit. What the Footie podcast. We'll put the links in below. And also Paul's journey as a whole. It's quite inspiring for any young, aspiring sports, commercial lawyer to go into. If you like similar episodes to this, please do tune in, like and share with anyone that you would consider and would benefit from this. Until next time, have a good one. Take care and bye-bye.